Hello, welcome to another episode of Mega Manga Monday. I am Jason Hahn, and today we are talking about One Piece, chapter 1065, officially titled Six Vegapunks. We got to learn a lot more about one of the most mysterious characters throughout the entire chapter or series in this chapter. And a good amount to talk about. But I am Jason Hahn, writer for ScreenRant.com. I write a lot of video games stuff for the website, but I'm a huge manga fan, so started Mega Manga Mondays to talk about new chapters and stuff about the mangas that we love. And today I've got my good buddy Ben to talk about One Piece. How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Yeah, I'm Ben. I write for Screen Rant as well for the comics and anime and manga sections. And I'm hyped to talk about One Piece as always because it's my favorite manga of all time.
We should already have this out, but this week we also got to talk about One Piece Film Red, because us Americans finally got to see it in theaters this past week, and we had a great time talking about everything that happened in the movie on our Mega Manga Mondays discussion of One Piece Film Red. And we had another special guest on there that you'll have to go check it out. But I hope you all enjoyed that chat. That this chapter actually started out with a very, very cool kind of double spread. I guess I'm not going to say cover, but a really cool spread Oda drew for the movie. And kind of getting to see, he tried to, in his words, capture the emotional final climax of the film, and I thought he did a pretty great job. I really like Uta's black wings on the spread, and getting to see all the pairings and stuff like that. It was really cool, especially for a color spread. I mean, any color spread that Oda has drawn himself is a real treat to stare at for a very long time.
Oh, yeah. It was just very, very good.
Yeah,
And
and
also featured Luffy Year 5, which the movie did feature as well for a very brief moment. But
yeah, I actually didn't like Gear 5 in the movie. I thought it was wasted and didn't need to be in there. But to hear more of my controversial hot takes, because I didn't love the movie as much as my buddies, but it was still a lot of fun, and even more fun to talk about it with friends. But I had a lot of controversial takes about that movie. So please check out Mega Manga Monday's Film Red discussion. But yeah, we didn't get any more cover story of the emotionless excursion. The last time we saw Pudding was kidnapped by Akiji, and I'm not. We're not sure if that cover story has any more to say. Because the last.
yeah, I mean, I personally think it's probably over, but then again, it's been interrupted before. Like there's been color spreads and other covers
Mhm.
in between different installments of it before. So maybe it will continue later on, but I think that it's kind of segued into the main
Yeah.
story now, so I don't think that it's likely to go on.
Well, yeah. For the first time in a few chapters, we didn't start this chapter out with Law versus Blackbeard. We've kind of moved away from that, and I'm afraid that we might not cut back to that fight until we learn how it ended, which is very
Yeah,
exciting.
I feel like it's sort of the Blackbeard versus Ace situation,
Hmm.
right? Where it, cut away and then it was just like Ace is defeated, Blackbeard won, which I think is a good technique, because like One Piece, it's kind of a fighting manga, but it's not really about the fight. It's really about the journey of the Straw Hats.
Hmm.
And while these fights are important for the world at large, and I think that this Blackbeard versus Law fight is going to have very significant ramifications, it's not really about the fights themselves. It's about their effect on the world. So I
Absolutely.
personally am fine with that.
Yeah, I'd almost actually put like the fighting as like a third priority of this story. I've always viewed One
Yeah.
Piece as definitely more of a comedy, and then it's an adventure, and it's an adventure manga that happens to have some pretty cool fights in it.
Yeah, and
So
I think of the big three manga, it's the one with the worst fights, personally, in my opinion. which isn't detracting from it because it's not necessarily what it's trying to do.
Right.
I think it's the best of the big three in terms of quality, uh, which is saying something because I think it is the worst fights. So.
Well, there's a lot of people online that just seem to enjoy One Piece just for the fights, and so when something silly happens, they get upset and just like, "Yeah, you guys know that this is a silly pirate manga, right?" Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, this chapter had some fighting. It had more shocking revelations, a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. But moving away from the cover because we're don't seem to be getting any more of the emotionless excursion. Seeing Katakuri in the movie though was cool, but just not enough. It wasn't enough Katakuri, but there was something in that movie that kind of was making me hope that maybe Katakuri could be showing up in the Blackbeard versus Law situation. Because in the movie, it's established that if somebody was to kidnap his sister, he would, go do something about it.
Well, as a note, we saw in the Emotionless Excursion that Katakuri and Oven had a big fight
Mm-hmm.
because they were tricked into that. So that probably knocked him out for a bit of time. Uh, and given that the cover story directly, went into the main story, he's probably still dealing with that, and also just cleaning up the ice that coated the kingdom. And so they might not have even noticed that pudding is missing yet.
Yeah, yeah. There's that too. I want more Katakuri.
I assume he'll get back into the story because, like you said, he's gonna probably try and get his sister back. The only complicating aspect would be is if he needs to assume leadership of the Big Mom pirates because
Yeah.
Big Mom is MIA.
Mm-hmm.
So that might prevent him from getting involved, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, a lot of excitement for the resolution of Big Mom Pirates, which I'm not sure when we're going to be getting that. Maybe not
Yeah,
anytime
probably in
soon.
quite a while.
Yeah. Well, speaking of not having to wait too long, we'll go ahead and start right into where the chapter picked up. We got a great interaction. I mean, the Straw Hat Pirates have grown in number to the point where we have so many of them that we don't normally get to see them have like cool interactions together. I mean, we have such a great understanding of all of these characters, but it's little interactions like how this chapter started out with Zoro and Brooke, just like having a cup of tea, them, clarifying that they decided to stay with the ship because, hey, we're on a government island. Like, if they all go and get captured, somebody's going to have to go rescue them. And
Hmm.
again, Zoro just proving that he's a fantastic first mate, always coming up with seemingly the most logical thing to do, which is kind of funny because he always seems to know what to do, but he never knows where to go.
Yeah.
So that was pretty fun. But Caribou showing up, and of course they forgot that he was even there. But honestly, Caribou should have just remained silent, especially with saying like, "Oh, please don't leave me on this government island." Oh, hey, well, you can get off the ship now. That's obviously going to play a huge role in the future because we know
Or
that.
it's just going to set Caribou up to be in a place where he learns another big reveal.
Mhm.
Uh, just continuing the trend of Caribou knowing the most in the series.
Well, yeah, last we saw Caribou, other than it being revealed that he was on the ship, he overheard their conversation about Pluton being under Wano. And he even says under his breath, like, "Oh man, I can't wait to tell this this bad guy or somebody about this." And at this point, we have so many converging storylines coming to Egghead right now too. We've got Shield, CP0 coming to kill Vegapunk essentially. We've got, I think, Sword even invested in picking up some Seraphim to hopefully go rescue Kobe from Blackbeard. We obviously have the Straw Hats here. It's just them kicking Caribou off. Almost anybody could pick him up, and even if the Navy was to pick him up and try to arrest him. I know where a secret evil weapon is. Please just spare me and I'll tell you where it is. Like, there's just so many potential factions that could benefit greatly from Carabo's information. And Zoro setting him off the ship was it seemed like a little decision, but I'm afraid of the ramifications it's going to have in the future.
Yeah, but knowing Oda, those will probably pop up in like 50 chapters. So,
Yeah.
you know, there's still a lot of Egghead Island to go. Or
Yeah.
maybe, I mean, who knows how big of an arc Egghead Island's going to be.
Well,
But
yeah. I mean, especially after coming off of Wano. I mean, I highly doubt it will be anywhere near the size of Wano, but uh,
yeah,
coming off of the largest arc One Piece has ever had, this one could be, anywhere from a dozen chapters to 50 chapters. So we don't know, but
yeah, and we don't know yet who the main antagonists are going to be. Like the Vegapunks could be the main antagonists, but Shaka seems somewhat reasonable, and he seems to be the leader of them. So,
yeah.
maybe they'll be kept in line. Maybe Cipher Pole is going to be the main antagonist. Maybe, I mean, who knows? We're just sort of along for the ride at this point,
You know
and
what?
there's no real main conflict or end to this arc in sight. So
Yeah,
very exciting.
we're still at the like exploratory like part of this arc. I feel like we're still getting the lay of the land. But honestly, I almost feel like the series has grown to the point, especially after us being so focused on Kaido for so long. I think the series has kind of grown to the point where we don't necessarily have just like one big main antagonist anymore because we just have so many plot threads converging and so many things that are into play right now that I'd be kind of surprised if we got just like one big bad for everybody to in this arc, because I know we have Blackbeard and Eam that eventually need to be dealt with, who are fantastic main antagonists. But the way that this is all building and just how everything is flowing with all these different storylines, like I just feel like there's so many things going on that it'd be kind of strange if just one bad guy was here. Because then
Well,
if Shield shows up and Sword shows up and then the Straw Hats are there, if we just have one powerful Vegapunk that all of them have to band together to fight against, I just feel like that's a little too cookie cutter. Or we just had that with
well,
Wano.
I mean, generally on the like arc level, there's at least one main goal that the Straw Hats are trying to accomplish,
Mm-hmm.
or like one main enemy that they're trying to defeat. Because Luffy is a one-track mind, so Luffy's gonna go whichever way he's gonna go, and he's gonna follow that until it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Which works for the series very well because the series is so complicated. It doesn't get bogged down in all the different factions. It's just Luffy's sort of the driving force of the narrative.
Absolutely.
And we haven't reached that point yet, but I think that we will reach a point where Luffy's gonna, have a goal and he's gonna set out to accomplish that goal. Um, so, the other factions will be getting involved as well, but there were a bunch of factions getting involved on Wano too, and there was still one main goal for Luffy, which was to defeat Kaido. So I could
All right.
see a similar sort of thing happening here.
Yeah, and so far, Luffy has just been, enjoying the fruits of the island. And we had a very exciting cliffhanger with Luffy involved at the very end of here. But we'll get to that part. But to just wrap up, I'm still on the first page of this chapter. But Brooke and Zoro's interaction was great. Them having tea is cool, but that is kind of as soon as like Brooke was introduced as like a swordsman, like a quick draw swordsman and stuff, I was like, oh man, I would love to see Zoro and Brooke, just like sparring, just like learning from each other. But I think it'd be really cool if Brooke, learned some sort of new technique from Zoro, or if they were able to learn from each other, essentially. But we've never really spent any time with the Straw Hats training or anything like that. And anytime we see Brooke doing anything, which I think Brooke has maybe doubled the amount of action he's done in the entire series in One Piece Red alone. um, but he kind of just always does the same thing where he flashes and then he's on the other side of Flash is probably not the best word to describe somebody like Brooke, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I gotta disagree here though. He's had some major roles in some of these post time skip arcs. I mean, look at his role in Whole Cake Island, right?
oh, of
Going
course.
to the poneglyphs and doing that. Also in Wano, he was doing different moves too, like his sort of Soul King sort of thing, with the giant like ghost projection sort of thing behind him, helping out Robin. Like I think Brooke is done. He's like not the most flashy Straw Hat, except when he does his flashy sword technique, but he does a lot of stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Um,
And yeah, I wasn't trying to undermine because yeah, he's kind of secretly an MVP. I mean,
yeah,
especially on Whole Cake, him fighting Big Mom single handedly and not die. Well, he's already dead. Ha 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 ha.
yeah,
But not being completely crushed. And A getting the poneglyphs, just major win. MVP Brook there. But I guess I would just like most of the Straw Hats. I would love to just see them, fight more, come up with different tactics and stuff. But just yeah, seeing Zoro and Brooke interacting is fantastic, and just I would love it if you got to see them kind of not so much inspire, um, but yeah, I guess inspire. Like if their fighting techniques, if they were able to become better because of each other. And again, that might be something that we don't have enough time for in the series. So, but these are two characters that I love, and getting to see them chat a little bit was fun. Hopefully, we get to see more of it in this arc because the rest of the Straw Hats might need a little bit of a rescuing. We kind of followed the rest of the crew that went into the laboratory, and they ran into the Jimbei Seraphim that we kind of all suspected. It seems like Vegapunk has taken all the warlords and made Seraphim of each of the warlords. We don't know if that includes all of them, including everybody who's ever been a warlord. So that means that we could have a law seraphim. We could have a crocodile seraphim. We could have a blackbeard seraphim, which would be bad. Bad news bears there. But it was kind of scary. I mean, as terrifying as the seraphim were made in our little fight on Amazon Lily, we got to see the Hawkeye and the Hancock Seraphim in action, and as intimidating as those were, seeing Jimbei's Seraphim swimming in the land using a devil fruit power, him being able to pretty much liquefy land and potentially use that for fishman karate techniques. Like he was about to turn Robin into Swiss cheese before Usopp stopped him because he had a whole hand of liquid in his hand, and it's been shown that those essentially could be like bullets. Like if fishmen are to throw that, it just becomes like an onslaught of bullets. So that was incredibly intimidating and just really cool to see. But it just kind of opens up the potential for more Seraphim action in the future. But
oh yeah, and we're gonna get some of that. Like we know that there are other seraphim on this island because Sword has said that explicitly.
mhm.
And I mean, if Vegapunks are under threat, they're probably gonna unleash the seraphim on whatever's threatening them, and the Vegapunks are gonna be under threat this arc. So
Mhm.
I bet we're gonna see all the seraphim on the island, like getting involved in the fight. Although, they're still young, so they're not ready for laser tests yet. So maybe they'll be held back a little bit by Edison or maybe Shaka. But
Yeah, and that was kind of another thing I really enjoyed about this chapter. Well, actually, I'll kind of stick on this fight, but we'll get more into the other Vegapunk shortly. But it was really cool getting to see more than a couple Straw Hats like fighting together. This is one of the first times in a long time that we've kind of been able to see more than a couple of them because throughout Wano, each one was paired off against their own fight. We had a couple, moments here and there of some pretty cool teamwork, but it was essentially most of the Straw Hats versus this one Jimbei Seraphim. And
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting when they said, like, even if you are Jinbei, if you're doing this, we're not going to let it stand, right? We're not going to, we're going to take you down. Which shows that, their loyalty is the most important part of about them. Like, if a Straw Hat betrays the crew and tries to take down the crew, the other Straw Hats aren't going to let it stand.
well, yeah, and it's that was all really tested and kind of the main story point of like Water 7, and a lot of people's favorite fight in the entire series, Law, or not Law, Luffy versus Usopp, really just kind of drove that home for all of them.
Yeah.
Like, so I mean, it's just the character development, staying there and being there was great. But yeah, I just really enjoyed getting to see them all together. Some people I've read a few comments on this chapter made a pretty great point. There's like, why didn't Sanji expel all the blood from the body, all the blood he has in his body when Robin used her new gigantic form, because she's just a giant naked lady. But he was distracted with Nami, trying to rescue Nami, which seems to always be the priority, is saving a lady in distress more than looking at naked ladies.
Mm.
But I definitely appreciated it. I'm a big Robin fan. But it was really cool getting to see them all in action, of course. And Frankie, who we all hope is going to be the MVP of this entire arc, uses Radical Beam, which shocked everybody who is watching this battle. And this battle just seemed like a big old test for both the Seraphim and the Straw Hats, obviously. We were introduced to other Vegapunks. We've been told that there was, I think, is it 6 Vegapunks?
Yep, there are 6. Yep. So
And
now we've met them all with this chapter. It introduced Edison, Pythagoras, and York. And we also learned a very interesting thing about how the Vegapunks are connected, whereas if one uses the bathroom, they all get the satisfaction of using the bathroom.
yeah, which a couple, I don't know if it was last podcast we had or the one before that. It's just one of the last few podcasts we had. I think that was kind of one of our theories that we had was
That if they use the bathroom, they all.
well,
I don't remember that.
yeah, I didn't have that on my bingo card. But the whole idea that all these Vegapunks, and I feel like this chapter confirms it, that all these Vegapunks are still essentially one Vegapunk. They're all the same
Oh yeah.
person. It's just each version of the Vegapunk persona, I guess. Each one of these Vegapunks fits a specific role for that Vegapunk, which might have been my theory. I don't know if I'll take 100% credit for it. That he kind of felt like his one central body that he may have been born with wasn't good enough at doing all of these things by himself. So he almost created these other versions of himself to kind of the shadow clone situation, where it's just like, I can't do this all by myself, so I need to create another one to do something for me. And that's this chapter kind of confirms that each one has a role that fulfills for the main central brain that is Vegapunk. It's still kind of up in the air if we have the central brain, in a vat somewhere that's, controlling all of these, or if it is all just coming from Shaka, the number one Vegapunk that we get to get, a little bit more time with at the end of this arc. But another thing you kind of brought up earlier in this discussion too is Shaka seems to consistently, like, he put a stop to this fight. I am enjoying, like, any time that Shaka interferes with something, the other Vegapunks get mad at him, which is kind of making me think that when Vegapunk was first creating these multiple versions of himself, if this was the first one that he made, because Vegapunk felt like he maybe needed that person, or he needs a person to be able to be like, hey, you need to slow it down, you're going overboard, or that's enough. The logical part of him was the first one that he may have created, but we'll see.
Well,
I know that'll get expanded on.
I'm not sure that Shaka's the logical part of him. It's just the moral part of him, right? And he uses logic to convince the other parts to not do immoral things. But I think the logical part would be more like Pythagoras, who's the wise, right? The thinker. Um,
Okay.
and, it was interesting too to see the distinction between Pythagoras and Edison here because, Pythagoras is the thinker and Edison's like the creator. And it's like, well, that's kind of a similar role, but here we see that Edison's a lot more hands-on in the actual experiments, and Pythagoras is more of the planner. Um, so that was kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, Pythagoras seems to be like the data entry, like observing and picking up, the details, while Edison seems to be the one to apply them to create something new.
Yeah,
And yeah, I mean, this chapter did a great job of introducing them and also highlighting their thought processes, and just excited to see more of it. They definitely don't all seem like fighters, so there's that. But as you said earlier, I definitely think that once we get to, you know, uh, things coming to a head in this arc, I think the Seraphim will probably have more combat, more to do combat wise than the Vegapunks, but we'll see. But yeah, getting to see how that all plays out, and so effectively too. Like I think Oda was able to completely like explain how the Vegapunk thing works within the span of like 3 pages here. Getting to see Edison come up with the idea. We got to see the light bulb pan or bubble, which I think as Oda had said something in an interview. He's just like, man, I miss the old days of comics where light bulbs would appear over people's heads when they had an idea, and just stuff like that. So it's pretty cool that he is throwing that in here. He finally got to do it.
I think he's done it before too.
I wouldn't be
Because
surprised.
Oda's just loved the. I mean, Oda, like, you could think of One Piece's art style as just a tribute to old animation and old comics and stuff. Because it really is. It's goofy, it's rubbery, it's
it's
very much that old style.
it's very flexible and bendy. It's able to be all
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Like Betty Boop could appear in One Piece, and I wouldn't bat an eye.
Or somebody based on Betty Boop, and they're called like Boop Betty.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we're getting to learn a lot more about Vegapunk, which is great. I'm glad that that's not something that we're continuing, um, the mystery on. We're getting details fast and furious with every chapter, so I'm loving that. Um, but yeah, I guess my last thought on the Seraphim, Jinbei, it's just I don't know if this is the first time it's been confirmed, but yeah, I mean this Jinbei Seraphim has many multiple abilities. I mean he has a devil fruit ability that. Oh yeah, I just remembered. It was one of the revolutionaries that was at Mary Joie during the Reverie. It's how
Mm.
Sabo and them were able to get into or pretty much infiltrate. They had the big guy who could essentially just turn ground into liquid, and that's how they were able to get around so sneakily. So yeah, that's
Yeah, we know that Shaka's in contact with the Revolutionary Army, so
yeah.
maybe there's something there.
Yeah, and I think that we might be getting a lot more information on the next chapter of One Piece because the end of this chapter, well, it kind of sets some things up.
Yeah, Void Century lore dump. Let's go. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Um, it's been kind of obviously the past in the Void Century is one of the biggest mysteries of the series, and there's been plenty of times that anytime we got like a glimpse, especially while we were on Skypiea, it seems like that the past um, civilizations were incredibly advanced, but this chapter definitely took that to a whole nother level. Um, this mysterious part of time has been teased so much. We had, especially in Skypiea and with Enel apparently going to the moon. As somebody who has experienced most of One Piece through the anime and the past couple hundred chapters has been reading the manga, I kind of totally missed the cover story of Enel going to the moon,
Yep,
which
that's a fun one.
yeah, and apparently, I don't know. I've watched a few content creators, talking about these things, so I'm not 100% sure where in the series this was revealed. But apparently, there was an ancient race of people who lived on the moon, who were incredibly advanced, and Anel going up to the moon means that he could potentially, encounter some very advanced technology up there.
Yeah, he also encountered people up there too. He encountered like little people. Whether those were robots or actual people remains to be seen. But
Oh man,
he's not alone up on the moon.
I didn't know that. Oh crap!
Yeah,
So,
you should read the cover story. It's very quick to read. So
yeah,
um,
well, yeah, I need to find out which chapters those cover stories on because it's. I think that is all about to get a lot more important. um,
oh yeah, no, nothing in One Piece is ever lost forever. It all comes back.
well, yeah, I thought Shaka's phrasing at the end here was very interesting. Well, especially Vegapunk was very interested in like Frankie, like who is this guy? He can do laser beams. This is cool. And honestly, it just got me more excited for the inevitable conversations between Frankie and Vegapunk. Um, and I don't know if the two are going to have some sort of big battle by the end of this, or if it's just going to strictly be a mentor sort of situation. But Vegapunk saying that this place is the past was really weird phrasing. I kind of feel like, it's just acknowledging that parts of the past were incredibly futuristic.
Yeah, I think it's more saying like we've only gained knowledge up to the point of like being behind the civilization, right? We lost so much knowledge that even this technology is just like, you know, it doesn't measure up to them, or it is at their level, you know.
which it just it's one of those things that just unlocks so many more questions the more you think about other characters in the series, like Toki, Odin's wife, who is a confirmed time traveler from the past. She would jump ahead hundreds of years whenever she used her ability. So when she jumped to this current time, it would have had to have been a regression. Like, oh man,
Yeah.
things are not nearly as advanced as they used to be. What happened here? Like,
Do we know if Toki was from the Void Century or if she was
I think
from
so.
a later time? That's
I
what I thought too. But I just wanted to confirm before we started theorizing about it.
yeah, I don't. I'm not 100% sure if it's ever been confirmed how far back she originally came from, but I think it has been established that she was, or she had been able to visit the Void Century, or she did exist in that time.
Okay, because if she came at a time after the Void Century, then it makes sense if she was just like, oh yeah, this is, a normal level of technology.
Yeah.
But
Um, yeah. So I mean, and there's plenty more. I mean, with other characters and just how this all relates to everybody. It's it I don't know if this is like a theory that we previously came up with or something like that, but it's such a huge like revelation that, and it still like feels like we've always known it. It's a really weird feeling. Because I don't want to say like, oh yeah, we've always known that the Void Century was an advanced civilization. I'm not sure. I don't want to misspeak here, but
I don't think we have. I mean, you can intuit it from like the ancient weapons being so powerful, right?
Yeah,
But we haven't had confirmation.
that might be it because I that may have been just a theory I've been building in my own head, or it's just something a lot of fans have accepted that at some point there were people on this planet that were so intelligent that they were beyond that timing. But the whole idea that we had entire kingdoms and civilizations that were so futuristic and advanced, it's starting to become so much more clear why the world government may have felt threatened by this, and how so many other civilizations banded together to stop or to bury everything that was previously on Egghead Island. But it's I think even established by Vegapunk in here that there were other places that were advanced like Egghead. I don't know. Let me see if Egghead wasn't the
Well, in the
only one.
past,
Yeah,
yeah,
that existed 900 years ago.
yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, we all knew that. I made. I think some of the phrasing between the fan subs and the official translations are kind of mixing up in my head here, but
This is why I only read the official translations because I don't want to get confused. So,
yeah. Well, yeah, we're also coming
I
off
mean,
of
not to say that fan subs are, inherently bad or whatever, but it's I applaud them for their efforts, but I always go with the official.
yeah, and
It's just easier that way
I'm
and generally
unfortunately
more accurate.
yeah, I'm unfortunately one of those people that just can't wait that long, and I gotta read that new chapter as soon as I can. But again, it's kind of weird phrasing. Egghead wasn't the only one that existed 900 years ago. Just well, yeah, of course. But if you had said that Egghead wasn't the only advanced country 900 years ago, then that would mean something else. Um, but
Well, I mean, I think that's what he's saying, or basically what it's like it's not the only island that had this level of technology, which, if it's a revelation to the Straw Hats that there was this sort of level of technology 900 years ago, then it makes sense that that would be an important detail to them as well, that they might not necessarily assume. So I think for us who've seen hints of this throughout many different islands, we're more like, oh yeah, that's obvious. But I think it is an important thing to mention for the Straw Hats.
yeah, yeah, and just as I said earlier, just incredibly, especially this chapter got me more excited with more Vegapunk and Frankie conversation. But I'm very anxious to see how Frankie takes this information.
Hmm.
That 900 years ago we were actually way more advanced than the world is today. And it's just how much was lost when the world government decided to take over, and they've essentially by creating the void century they made it illegal to research, to talk about it, to know anything about the void century. Seems to be like the world hasn't really developed or grown in that amount of time, other than lately in the last couple of years. Say definitely with Wapple metal and other advancements. If you saw the One Piece film Red movie, they've kind of invented the internet a little bit with snails. It's
Yeah, I was gonna say like we don't know when the snails and stuff and other technology were invented, and also like we don't know the degree of technology that was left after the void century. I
mhm.
mean, maybe they didn't even have good shipwrights at that point. Like, I think that the world could have been just progressing in technology, but it's not like anything too futuristic to us. So, uh, I'm not necessarily sure. I mean, the world government probably had restrictions in place to prevent them from getting too futuristic, but I mean, they probably let technology progress a little bit at least. So,
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really hoping that we get a lot more clarification. I think we're about to. Possibly some leaks may have suggest that we're about to get a lot of flashback info. So very exciting, very exciting. Hopefully we get to learn more on Vegapunk and obviously the Void Century, but We don't know if he's 900 years old or not, or if it's just stuff that he's learned himself. But yeah, I guess another thing I wanted to bring up too is just another part about this chapter I thought was really funny is Usopp. Am I a Vegapunk? Like,
Yeah. I mean, that's just classic Usopp. And it's great to have just that humor throughout. Like, Oda's a man. As you said, like One Piece is a comedy. That's one of its main features, and this reminds us why. Because Oda can just effortlessly make jokes like this that are just so absurd, but it fits the series and the characters. So.
absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean they're all kind of stuck there now. As soon as we saw these giant boots, they're like, oh man, they're so light. Just like, I bet those could be activated to be heavy when they need them to be. But
Yeah, and here they are.
yeah, exactly. Well, Ben, did you have any other thoughts on this chapter? That I mean,
No, that's it for me.
I feel like we could speculate on Void Century and what this last couple panels could all be leading up to, but
Yeah, but we might want to save that for a next chapter because it seems like that's going to have a lot more
yeah,
about it than this one.
absolutely, man. Well, yeah, that was kind of all my notes on the chapter. I love that we have officially gotten to meet all of Vegapunk. I guess is the best way to say that.
Yeah,
And we Luffy seeing this giant robot and wanting to check it out. But I mean, I don't know if Luffy, Jinbei, and his whole side are gonna hear all this explanation and stuff like that. I'm sure it'll get filled in eventually, but yeah, I don't know what Luffy's main goal here is going to be. I mean, it could also be one of the first arcs ever where Luffy is just a side character and it's just a lore centric thing.
which I wouldn't hate either. I
Yeah,
think that lore is very big for this series, so it would be an interesting change of pace and would give a lot of fans what they've been waiting for years. So.
yeah, and unless Vegapunk like drops some sort of major bad guy line, because I mean, especially it was teased in this chapter by Lilith saying like, yeah, we're trying to figure out some way to harness if there was like an undying flame, if we could create a sun. Like it was kind of weirdly specific. And we found out last arc that Luffy is sort of he's got the sun god fruit. Um,
Yeah.
so I mean,
So maybe there will be something there. We'll just have to wait and see.
yeah, I guess so. Because yeah, right now, as you said, we don't really have like a clear antagonist. We don't really have somebody that Luffy specifically is like, oh man, I got to kick this guy's ass, like,
Yeah.
because he's still just going around having a great time. So, but we'll definitely be talking about chapter 1066 next week when it comes out. I know a lot of series are on break next week, but not One Piece. So we'll definitely be talking about it. But yeah, man, I think we'll go ahead and move into plugs and recommendations. I hope you guys will check out other Mega Manga Mondays discussions. We talk about series like Chainsaw Man, My Hero Academia, Boruto, Dragon Ball Super, and obviously One Piece. And as I said, we just had a podcast come out for One Piece Film Red. With some special guests on that one. Had a great time talking about it, and got to air out my gripes with the movie and talk to some people who enjoyed it a little bit more than I did, and that kind of helped me appreciate some things that I previously missed. So please check out megamangamondays.podbean.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at mmangamondays. And another plug from me, would love it if you checked out screenrant.com. Jason Hahn, have done a lot of video game related content, news, reviews, and previews. And a lot of the guys we talk about write in the comics and manga section. Some very interesting, introspective articles, sometimes with some really interesting theories that you may have not come up with. But please check out my buddy's work on Screen Rants and Honzy and Friends. I have a YouTube series called Honzy and Friends where I play cool video games, sometimes with friends. A lot of the times it's me streaming. I like to stream on Wednesdays and Sundays. But I'd really appreciate if you check that out and subscribe to that channel. Ben, how about you, man?
Yeah, well, of course, I'm also ready for Screen Rant, so check that out. But for in terms of recommendations, I've been going on a bit of a rabbit hole lately, looking at a bunch of MC Escher art pieces.
Ooh.
And most people know Escher just from the weird stairways that, go to impossible places. But he has a lot of other interesting things as well. So, if you've never experienced a lot of his work, definitely look into those because they're very mind-bending. And in terms of plugs, I have a YouTube channel of my own called YGO from Zero, where I go over historical formats of the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, be sure to check that out.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I'm going to have links to our plugs and recommendations in the description. So definitely check that out as well. But that'll wrap up this Mega Manga Monday discussion on One Piece chapter 10,000. Oh my goodness. 1065. That's a lot of One Piece. Yeah, as I said, we'll definitely be talking the next chapter, 1066, next week. And I look forward to chatting to you then.
Yeah, see you then.